Love is a funny thing. We all think we're ready for it. We all say we want it. But the truth is, love has a way of exposing every hidden part of you. And if you're someone who's been avoidant, someone who keeps walls high, who runs at the first sign of real intimacy, falling in love can feel like standing on the edge of a cliff without a parachute. But here's the thing, when an avoidant falls in love, something magical starts to happen. You fight yourself, you argue with your own heart. One part of you says, don't get too close, you'll get hurt. And the other part whispers, but what if this is the love you've been waiting for your entire life? And that war inside you, that's not weakness, that's growth. It means your old armor is starting to crack. It means the walls you built for survival are being challenged by something far stronger. Connection. Real, vulnerable, soul-level connection. Let's be honest. If you're avoidant, you've probably mastered the art of independence. You've convinced yourself you don't need anyone. You've told yourself you're safer when you don't rely on love. But when love finds you, it doesn't knock politely. It kicks down the door. And suddenly, you realize independence is great. But interdependence, two people standing strong, side by side, that's power. Falling in love as an avoidant feels terrifying because it demands courage. It demands that you unlearn the habits that once kept you safe. It asks you to sit in the discomfort of being seen and listen, being seen for who you really are. That's the scariest thing in the world. But it's also the most freeing. When you lean in, when you stop running, when you allow love to meet you where you are, that's when transformation begins. Love isn't supposed to fix you. Love isn't supposed to complete you. Love is meant to reveal you. And when you let it, you'll discover a version of yourself you never knew existed. Braver, softer, stronger, more open than you ever thought possible. So, to the avoidant who has fallen in love, don't sabotage it. Don't ghost, don't run. Take the leap, because the truth is, the very thing you're afraid of love is the thing that will set you free. When we think about love, we often picture it as something soft, romantic, or easy, but the truth is that love is more like a mirror. It doesn't just show you the pretty parts of yourself, it reflects everything. The fears, the scars, the insecurities, the old defense systems you thought you had buried. For someone who has spent their life being avoidant, who has mastered the art of keeping distance and holding back emotions, falling in love isn't just about letting another person in. It's about watching the walls they've built start to shake. Those walls were never random, they were built with purpose. Maybe they came from past heartbreak, a childhood where vulnerability didn't feel safe, or simply a lifetime of believing that depending on others equals weakness. Whatever the reason, those walls became protection. But here's what love does. It walks straight up to that wall, knocks on it, and says, I see you, but I'm not leaving. The thing about walls is that they can hide your pain, but they also hide your potential. They shield you from rejection, but they also block out intimacy, laughter, and the kind of safety that only comes from being truly known. And that's what falling in love begins to reveal. Suddenly, you realize that the armor you wore so proudly has been keeping you from experiencing something deeper. When someone cares enough to get close, your instinct might be to push them away, but the longer they stay, the more undeniable the truth becomes. The walls were never about strength, they were about fear. Love exposes what those walls hide, and it does it in a way nothing else can. You might find yourself overwhelmed by how much you feel, surprised at how deeply you care, or even annoyed that someone could matter so much. And in those moments you begin to see the cracks in your old narrative, that story you've been telling yourself, that you're better off alone, that nobody can truly understand you, that closeness will only end in pain, starts to unravel. It's not that the fears disappear overnight, but love shines a light on them so they can't stay hidden anymore. And this exposure is uncomfortable, sometimes unbearably so. It might make you want to retreat, to run back into solitude where it feels safer. But the truth is, exposure is the first step toward freedom. You cannot heal what you refuse to see. You cannot grow if you never confront what's been holding you back. Falling in love, especially for the avoidant, is like being invited to tear down your own walls, brick by brick, not because someone forces you to, but because connection makes you realize you no longer want to live behind them. Love reveals the parts of you that are tender, the parts that long to connect, the parts that have been aching to be acknowledged. And once those parts are brought into the light, you can't unsee them. That's the gift of love. It doesn't just make you feel, it makes you face yourself. It exposes what's been hidden, and in doing so, it offers you the chance to finally step into a fuller, freer version of who you are. When an avoidant falls in love, one of the most striking things that happens is the war inside their own mind. It's a tug-of-war between two voices that feel equally loud and equally convincing. One voice says, "Don't get too close. Remember what happened last time. If you let them in, they'll only hurt you. You're safer behind the walls." And then there's the other voice, softer but persistent, saying, "But what if this is different? What if this is the love you've always wanted? What if this time it actually works?" That battle, as uncomfortable as it feels, is not a sign that something is wrong. It's proof that something is shifting, that inner conflict is actually the birthplace of growth. For years, an avoidant may have lived on autopilot, running from intimacy, cutting ties the moment things got too close, or convincing themselves they don't need anyone. Those patterns become habits, and habits start to feel like truth. But love has a way of challenging what you've accepted as permanent. Suddenly, the avoidant who always walked away begins to hesitate at the door. The person who always needed space finds themselves missing someone's presence. That tension is uncomfortable, but it's also a signal that the old way of living doesn't fully fit anymore. Growth always begins in discomfort. Think about it like this. When a seed is planted in the soil, it has to break apart before it can grow. That breaking apart looks like destruction, but it's really transformation. The same is true for someone wrestling with the push and pull of intimacy. The fear is still there, but the desire for love is beginning to break through. Every time they feel torn between shutting down or leaning in, they're actually standing at a crossroads where real change can happen. And the fact that there's even a choice to make now, rather than just running, is evidence of progress. This conflict is exhausting, yes, but it's also revealing. It shows you the exact edges of your growth. When you feel panic rising because someone wants to get close, that panic is pointing to the unhealed parts of you. When you feel a deep longing to stay, despite the fear, that longing is pointing to your capacity for connection. It's all feedback, all information that helps you see what's possible if you dare to lean into love instead of avoiding it. Most people think growth looks like confidence, like clarity, like knowing exactly what to do. But in reality, growth often looks like confusion. It looks like battling yourself. It looks like wanting to run and wanting to stay all at once. That doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're in transition. It means your old patterns are being challenged by something new and more powerful. Love is testing the story you've always told yourself. And the conflict you feel is the sound of that old story starting to crack. And if you can hold steady in that conflict, if you don't let fear win, you discover that on the other side of it lies expansion. You realize that the war within you wasn't about weakness, it was about evolution. Every moment you feel torn is a moment you're rewriting the script of your life. That inner conflict is not the end. It's the beginning of love changing you from the inside out. For someone who has lived with an avoidant attachment style, independence becomes a badge of honor. It feels like proof of strength, of control, of not needing anyone to survive. You learn how to handle everything on your own, your emotions, your struggles, your disappointments. You convince yourself that relying on others is risky, that closeness equals vulnerability, and vulnerability equals danger. Independence becomes your armor, and you wear it proudly because it gives you a sense of safety. But when love enters the picture, that narrative gets disrupted. You start to realize that while independence is valuable, it is not the ultimate goal. The deeper truth is that interdependence, two people standing strong together, creates a kind of power that independence alone can never provide. At first, this shift can feel like a loss of control. If you're used to being entirely self-reliant, letting someone else support you can feel unnatural, even threatening. The instinct is to push away, to prove you don't need them, to retreat back into the safety of doing everything by yourself. But over time, if you allow love to stay, you begin to see that interdependence doesn't mean weakness. It doesn't mean you're incapable of handling life alone. Instead, it means you are brave enough to let someone walk beside you, not because you can't stand on your own, but because life is richer when you don't have to. Independence is surviving, interdependence is thriving. Think about it like climbing a mountain. Sure, you could make the journey alone, and reaching the top solo would feel like an accomplishment. But imagine the difference if you had someone climbing beside you, someone who cheers when you push through a tough stretch, someone who steadies you when you stumble, someone who shares the breathtaking view when you finally reach the summit. That shared experience amplifies the victory. It's not about needing them to climb, it's about wanting them there because together the journey becomes more meaningful. This is the lesson avoidants often resist but eventually come to understand. Connection doesn't erase independence, it enhances it. Being interdependent doesn't take away from who you are. It multiplies what you bring to the table. It means two complete individuals choosing to build something stronger together. It's not about losing yourself in someone else, it's about discovering new parts of yourself through the presence of another. The fear, of course, is that interdependence opens the door to hurt. When you let someone close enough to matter, you also give them the power to disappoint you. And that is terrifying for someone who has built their life around emotional self-sufficiency. But love asks you to take that risk because without it, you only ever live half the experience. Independence can protect you, but it can also isolate you. Interdependence may expose you, but it also connects you, sustains you, and grows you. When an avoidant finally allows themselves to step into this dynamic, something shifts. They realize that love isn't about losing freedom, it's about gaining partnership. They see that standing together doesn't weaken their independence, it strengthens it. Independence teaches you how to stand alone. Interdependence teaches you the power of standing side by side. And when you've lived a lifetime avoiding closeness, that realization is nothing short of transformative. For someone who has built their identity around avoidance, vulnerability feels like the enemy. It feels like exposure, like leaving yourself wide open for rejection, judgment, or abandonment. Every instinct tells you to pull back, to stay hidden, to protect the parts of yourself that feel too tender to share. Vulnerability is uncomfortable because it means dropping the mask you've worn for years, the mask of strength, of control, of distance. But here's the paradox. The very thing that feels the most unsafe is actually the doorway to freedom. When you finally allow yourself to be seen, not just the polished version, but the messy, uncertain, emotional you, that's when true connection begins. Being vulnerable isn't about telling everyone your deepest secrets or exposing your pain without boundaries. It's about letting someone witness who you really are, without performance or pretense. It's about saying, "This is me, flaws and all." And trusting that the right person will stay, not because you're perfect, but because you're real. For avoidance, this step is terrifying. The idea of being fully known feels like handing over control. But the truth is, control is an illusion. No matter how high you build your walls, you can't stop life from touching you. The only real choice you have is whether you want to experience life alone in your fortress, or step outside and risk connection. What makes vulnerability powerful is that it creates intimacy that nothing else can. You can share laughs, adventures, and surface-level conversations with many people. But the kind of bond that changes you only happens when you allow yourself to be emotionally exposed. When you admit your fears, when you express your needs, when you let someone see the cracks in your armor, that's when you give them the chance to love you for who you truly are, not for the role you play, but for the person you are underneath. That kind of acceptance is liberating because it shows you that love doesn't have to be earned by being flawless. It can be given freely, even when you're imperfect. Of course, vulnerability comes with risk. Sometimes you will open up and be misunderstood. Sometimes you will share yourself and not be met with the response you hoped for. But the alternative, never letting anyone close enough to disappoint you, means never letting anyone close enough to truly love you either. Avoidants often live in that trade-off, choosing safety over intimacy. Yet when they fall in love and choose vulnerability, they discover that the payoff is worth the risk. They learn that being open doesn't guarantee pain. Sometimes it guarantees connection, understanding, and even healing. Vulnerability is not weakness, it's courage. It's looking fear in the face and saying, "I'm going to let myself be seen anyway." And what happens next is often surprising. Instead of rejection, there's acceptance. Instead of judgment, there's compassion. Instead of isolation, there's connection. That moment of being seen fully and loved anyway is where freedom lies, because once you experience it, you realize you don't have to hide anymore. You don't have to keep living behind walls. You can be both strong and soft, guarded and open, independent and connected. And in that balance, you finally taste the freedom you've been searching for all along. Love has a way of holding up a mirror to who you truly are. It doesn't swoop in to rescue you. It doesn't magically erase your wounds, and it doesn't suddenly make you whole. That's the mistake many people make. They believe that once they find love, all the emptiness, the insecurities, and the old hurts will vanish. But love is not a cure. Love is a revelation. It shows you the parts of yourself you've ignored, the patterns you've repeated, and the potential you've been too afraid to step into. For someone who leans avoidant, this realization is especially powerful, because for so long, they've convinced themselves they don't need love at all. And yet, once love arrives, it becomes impossible to deny the transformation it sparks. When you fall in love as an avoidant, you quickly learn that love doesn't fix the fears you carry, it exposes them. Suddenly, the walls you've built feel heavy, the distance you've kept feels lonely, and the strategies you've used to stay safe start to feel like limitations. Love puts a spotlight on the ways you've been holding yourself back. At first, this exposure can feel uncomfortable, even threatening, but it's also the invitation you've been waiting for, the chance to finally confront what's been hidden. Instead of numbing, avoiding, or running, love asks you to pause and look inward. And here's the beauty of it. Love doesn't need you to be healed or perfect in order to exist. It doesn't demand that you have it all figured out. What it does is create space for you to step into a fuller version of yourself. It reveals your bravery in choosing to stay when you want to run. It reveals your tenderness when you allow yourself to care deeply. It reveals your strength not in holding everything inside, but in risking openness with someone else. Every time you let love draw out these qualities, you discover layers of yourself you didn't even know were there. This is why love is not about completion. It's about discovery. It doesn't come to fill a void in you, but to help you see that you were already whole. Love simply shines a light on the parts of you that have been buried under fear and self-protection. It reveals your capacity for connection, your ability to trust, and your courage to show up fully. In this way, love becomes a kind of teacher, gently pulling you into growth, not by fixing you, but by showing you what's already inside of you. For the avoidant, this is life changing. All those years of telling yourself you're better off alone start to fade when you realize that love isn't here to make you dependent. It's here to make you more authentic. It's not here to patch up your cracks. It's here to reveal that those cracks are where the light gets in. The very thing you feared most, love, is the thing that reveals your truest, bravest, and most expansive self. Once you see that, there's no going back, because you understand that love isn't the destination. It's the revelation of who you've always had the potential to become. And so, when an avoidant falls in love, it is not just a story of romance. It is a story of courage, of walls crumbling, of fear transforming into freedom, and of discovering a self that was waiting all along to be seen. Love doesn't come to fix us. It comes to reveal us, to stretch us, and to remind us that true strength lies not in running, but in staying. As we close, I want to thank you for leaning into this message, for giving your heart permission to reflect, and for daring to imagine what becomes possible when fear no longer leads the way. Thank you.